1.2a is getting us ready to do section 1.2 in college algebra, which is dealing with functions and graphing and their domain. So before we get to doing that, we have to remember how to do number line and interval notation. So interval notation is a way to express a wide range of values using parentheses or brackets, all right? So what we want to keep in mind is that our interval notation is going to use these inequality symbols. So without the line underneath, it's just strictly less than, strictly greater than. So strictly less than just means all the numbers smaller than that number, but don't include that number. And then the greater than symbol means all numbers larger than that number, but don't include that number. But the second we put that little line under there, that's equivalent to equal. So it's less than or equal to, which means include all the numbers less than that and what's equal to that. So that number can be included, and that's the same thing with the greater than, all right? So how do we set it? So I think like the number line's easier than the interval notation. So I like to graph it on a number line first to get an idea, and then we can use that number line to help us do an interval notation using brackets or parentheses, all right? So this one, how we say it, it's stated x such that x is less than 4. Okay, so we want to think of all numbers that are less than 4. So we'll do our number line, and I'm not picky. You don't have to start at 0. Let's just start at the number 4. Okay? And I'm putting a dot, not necessarily, let's not put a dot, let's maybe even just put a tick mark, okay? I'm putting just like a marker of where our bracket or parenthesis is going to go, all right? Let's first do the shading. What numbers do we care about? We care about all numbers less than 4. So what direction are we going to shade? To the left or to the right? To the left. So kind of just squiggle in as much as you can. MyMathLab, I think you just drag it. All right, and then we get to 4. Is 4 included? Yes or no?
No.
No, because it's strictly less than, right? So that's when we use a parenthesis. In past classes, guys, and your parentheses always kind of opens towards what you shaded. You notice that? So it's like everything that's shaded. Have you guys ever done this before but used like open circles, closed circles? You know what I'm talking about? Open circles, closed circles? It's the same idea. An open circle means up to but don't include it. So like a parenthesis equivalent to an open circle. You go up till 4 but don't include 4. 3.9999999 is okay, but 4 is not, all right? So how do we write this in interval notation? Interval notation is always a lower bound and an upper bound. But what do you notice about us? We shaded to the left. Are we ever stopping? No, we're going on and on forever. What's that word for that number that means forever? Infinity, right? So what we're going to do is we never hit infinity. We never include it, so it's always going to be a parenthesis. Are we going to positive infinity or are we going to negative infinity if we're going this direction? Negative. Is that all right? And then what's our upper bound? Where did we stop? We stopped at 4, but did we include 4? No, so we use a parenthesis. Okay, so interval notation always goes from low to high, okay, lower bound to upper bound. And if you go on forever, that bound might be negative infinity or positive infinity. Otherwise, if you're bound between two numbers, you have two bounds. Those are the easy ones. Let's look at this next one. This is read x such as x is greater than negative 10, so it's the same idea, but greater than means which direction are we going to be shading? Right. To the right. So here's negative 10, and we're going to shade to the right. Is negative 10 included, though? No, because it's strictly greater than negative 10, so we're going to do an open parenthesis towards, again, the shading. Is that all right? So again, interval notation, lower bound to upper bound. What's the lowest number that we're dealing with?
10.
Negative 10, right? But you're right. Yep, negative 10. So we're going to negative 10. But what's the highest number we're going to go to? Infinity. Do we ever hit infinity? No. So infinity always, always, always has a parenthesis. Are there any questions there? So it's always left to right. And so that's why I think the number line kind of helps, guys. Where's our lower bound here? Way down here at negative infinity. Where's our upper bound? 4. Where's our lower bound here? Negative 10. Where's our upper bound? The other two you guys can probably do without me. The only difference is once you have that equal sign there, you're going to include it. So instead of a bracket, instead of a parenthesis, you use a bracket, all right? And that's the only difference. So x such that x is less than negative 5. We're going to go negative 5 and lower, but negative 5 is included. So to show that it's included, we're going to use a bracket. Okay, and that's the difference. Like, so you might have used a closed circle before, but we're going to use a bracket because those difference means you can go all the way up to -5, and -5 can be part of what you're talking about. So when we go to do the interval notation, it'll basically be identical to the very first one we did. But when we talk about -5, we'll have a bracket there because we're including -5. So our lower bound's negative infinity. Our upper bound's -5, but -5 is included, so we'll use a bracket. And then you guys probably have, I think most of you have already done the bottom one. Let me catch up with you. We're going to do x greater than or equal to 22, so we'll do 22 and higher, but we're including 22, so we'll have a bracket opening towards our shaded area. And doing lower bound to upper bound, our lowest we go is 22, but it's included, so we'll have a bracket, and we're going to positive infinity. But we never hit infinity, so it always has a parentheses. Is that okay, guys? Okay. So that's kind of just the key difference is, remember, it's always left to right, low to high, and then included, use a bracket, not included, use a parentheses. So on these, we want to use interval notation. Notice it doesn't say, like example 1 through 8, that we have to graph it at all. If you get confused or need to graph it to help you, feel free. But if you want to do interval notation, go right to it, you can. So let's think about example 1. We want values of x that are greater than 12. So what's the lowest number we're going to deal with? 12, right? Are we going to include 12, though? No. So we'll have parentheses 12, and then we want all numbers greater than 12, so what direction are we going to go? To positive infinity. Is that okay? And like I said, you're like, oh, I can't just jump to 12:8. Draw the number line, and then hopefully you can kind of see it. But if they don't ask you to do it, you don't have to draw the number line. All right, example 2 is basically identical to that, but it's x is greater than or equal to -6. So greater than or equal to -6 means the lowest we can go is what? -6, but we're going to include it, so what do we need? A bracket, and then we'll go up to infinity. Example 3, notice our inequality symbol has flip-flopped. So now we're thinking of values less than these numbers. So that means our lower bound's going on to infinity, but not infinity, a negative infinity, right? So we want values of n that are less than or equal to 8. So what's the lowest we go? Negative infinity. But then less than or equal to 8, that means 8 is our cap, right? It's how high we're going to go. And we're going to include it, so what do we need? A bracket. Is that all right? So it's always low to high. This is identical to that, except for don't use a bracket, right? Y, values less than 3. So we're going to go from 2.999 all the way to negative infinity. So we're going to start at negative infinity and work our way up the number line until we get to 3. But we're not going to include 3, so we're going to have a parenthesis. Okay, so 5 and 6, we didn't actually see examples of these. But I think these are easier than 1 through 4 because there's an obvious lower bound and there's an obvious upper bound. And just decide whether you're using brackets or parentheses, right? Do you agree that on both of these we're going to use brackets? So we just care about 1 through 6. And you might ask, like, why are we doing this? Because in college algebra, what you're going to find is we're going to start solving inequalities and such, that instead of one answer to an equation, you'll have a range of answers to an inequality. So what exactly does 1, 6 mean? It means every number between 1 and 6, including 1 and 6. So it might be 1, it might be 6, it might be 2.3, I don't know. Any number between 1 and 6. Notice example 6 is identical to that, but both of them are strict inequalities, meaning we're not including those bounds. So we're going to use parentheses, -6, 8. Is that okay? All right, so these are the most awkward ones, 7 and 8. Where we're going to have 2 sets of inequalities. So we're going to have 2 sets of intervals. But then we have to kind of join them together. And we join them together with this U. It's called union. And it's basically a plus sign for intervals. So like you can add numbers 2 plus 3 and you use the plus sign. You can't add intervals, which are ranges of numbers. So you're going to use the union sign. So what we're going to first focus on is just ask yourself, what would x being less than 1 look like as an interval? Well, x being less than 1 means every number 1 or smaller, right? So we're going all the way down to what? What's our lower bound there? If we want values less than 1, what's our lower bound if we're going on forever? We're going to the left forever. Where are we going? Oh. Negative infinity, okay? Negative infinity. But where are we going to stop when we come up that number line? We're going to stop where? Well, nope, because we're going to look at them individually. So we're just looking at x less than 1
Oh, okay,
right now.
so yeah,
We're going to stop at 1. Are we including 1? No. So we need a parenthesis. All right. Leave a little bit of a space, just a little bit of a space, and let's just do the inequality for x being greater than 5. If x is greater than 5, that means 5.001 and higher, right? So what's the lower bound? 5, but don't include it. And we're going to go all the way up to where? Infinity. So what numbers do we care about? We care about all those numbers less than 1 and all those numbers greater than 5. So we care about all of them. So you use this union symbol that's just like a U. That means these numbers and these numbers. Okay? So we'll just do the same thing with example 8, guys. Just focus on this one. How do you show numbers less than or equal to negative 4? Well, if you're going to the left, you're going to negative infinity. But where will you stop when you come up the number line? Negative 4. Are you going to include it?
Yeah.
So what are you going to have? Bracket. Okay? And then when you jump over to the other one, leave a little bit of space, and we can write that union symbol there, right? And then how do we show y greater than or equal to 2? Well, where are we going to start? Bracket, and then 2, and we're going to go all the way up to
Infinity.
positive infinity. You got it.